Speaking of the Glow Noise partnership, if you could please come on camera.
Hello, Meredith. Can you hear me and see me?
I can, yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to also speak about the Global partnership today. And also many thanks for those who waited very patiently until the end of the workshop as well. And also we will continue with the questions. It's great to be here as well after we met together with the Game On Alliance. And let me introduce myself very briefly. My name is Sevtap Özdoğan, and I'm currently coordinating the Glonoise Partnership Project in the International Maritime Organization, which is a UN specialized agency with a mandate for setting global regulations for the maritime safety, security, and protection of marine environment. And I worked in the maritime administration for almost like 15 years, and I'm a graduate of science and technology post studies. And I must admit that everyone should relax a bit, except for the scientists who are working on it, that it's a quite a niche and very complicated subject for everyone. And that's why these organizations, such this kind of workshops and all awareness raising, like events are very important, that we should also ensure the bridge and channeling information to all the developing countries to have the right perspectives and to find the solutions to their problems. So that's very brief introduction to myself and to the subject as well, and we can continue with the next slide, please. The Glonoise Partnership Project also simultaneously almost like arise with the discussions on the policies and regulatory perspectives in the International Maritime Organization, which is around like 2022. And as you know, and already mentioned that the revised guidelines was adopted in 2023. So the project launched in 2024. I think you need to press once more, please. Yes, we will see the figures as well and the years. And my colleague Ricardo Batista will also provide very detailed information about the regulatory perspective of the IMO tomorrow in tomorrow's session. And when we look at the Glonoise partnership, we started in 2024, very early beginning the project, but as like all the projects, we had some delays of like 6 months. And our project is a very limited time frame with limited funding. We have 1,950,000 US dollars from the Global Environment Facility fund from the JEF, but also we have the cash co-financing from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, meaning like $2 million in total. And our implementation period is until the end of this year, December 2025, but we have already applied for an extension as all the projects for additional 12 months, and we hope to complete the project by December 2026. And our beneficiary countries are the lead pilot countries are Argentina and Chile, Costa Rica, India, South Africa, and Trinidad and Tobago. And I see many colleagues and familiar names here, all participating from our countries, and many thanks for them for joining us today. And we have the partner countries, Georgia and Malaysia, twinned with India, and Madagascar, twinned with South Africa. So the lead pilot countries are a kind of exchange and knowledge hub for the twinning countries. And when we look at the main components and the outputs of the project, we see that we are producing a global good, which can be also worded in JAF wording as well, JAF language. So which is the URN assessment online toolkit that will be piloted in our countries first and then be implemented as a global toolkit after being improved. And another important pillar of the project is the raising awareness, which I consider very much important because in 2 years implementation period and with very limited funding, I think the most effective part would be to increase awareness in the countries and also not in the lead pilot countries, but also neighboring countries and providing a regional perspective to outreach. And capacity development is very important as well. And so far, we have outreached almost like 1,000 stakeholders over like 50 countries in terms of through our like national workshops and also our global workshop, which we organized last year together with WMU in September 2024. And together with this, we also completed a URN encyclopedia, I call, which is over like 200 pages, and including the analysis, a gap analysis of all the international instruments, including the IMO instruments, but also international conventions as well, all the UN, and also the regional SEAS conventions, together with the national policy analysis of our lead pilot countries. The fourth component is very important because it is also the knowledge dissemination through the experience notes and through twinning arrangements, and also through contribution to the strategic action plans, all regional, by means of the IW Learn platform of the GEF, which is also a very essential, I think, virtual kind of knowledge center for everyone who wants to also consult, because especially the countries can find similar projects maybe in their own regions by accessing to this platform as well. So next slide, please. And this is one of the actual reasons why we are here, as we know that the science is the backbone of the URN policy. I'm not going to repeat everyone's saying. I'm not a scientist on this issue. I'll be quite modest about it. But when I started the project, one of the challenges was that I spent almost like 3 or 4 months mapping out all the initiatives that were produced by the EU, some kind of projects, some other NGO initiatives, but still, and today I'm also continuing to discover many more initiatives. So I think the most important challenge is not the lack of science, as many may say, but it is lack of connectivity. So in this case, I very much welcome all the presenters today here, also whoever is participating today in this workshop, that we have the Global Strategic Partnership in the project as a global initiative undertaken by the IMO, but also with the support of the JEF. I think it's a very, very, what can I say, accessible platform where we can bring everyone's efforts and also the findings, outputs here in the project. The next slide, please. But it is not only that we are channeling this to the developing countries through the project, but it's also the IMO and IMO's experience building phase, establishing a bridge between the science and informing the future regulatory directions through the national data inputs. So GLONOIS will be contributing this process by the outputs of our countries, and also the Global Strategic Partnership, as I mentioned. Also, we are bringing science, industry, and policy making communities. But eventually, as our Secretary General will be announcing in the United Nations Ocean Conference in Nice in next month, that we are also planning to establish a global industry alliance where we only welcome the industry representatives. So we have now a kind of list of interested partners and stakeholders to join our GIA, Global Industry Alliance, but we are here to also welcome more, and it will be announced in the next month's UNOC meeting as well, IMO side event as well. And I'm also very happy to say here that underwater noise is also selected as one of the topics to be presented in the side event of the IMO in the next month, which means that we also attribute as IMO quite importance to the subject, and there is a strong momentum at the moment. We can continue with the next slide, please. Yeah, here also the reference chart that was recently added to the revised guidelines, and we are supporting our member states in also defining the sensitive areas and maps and setting the targets, and also, of course, just encouraging and promoting the incentives by showcasing different models of the countries. So next slide, please. And when we go back to the toolkit, I'm sure that many of you might be also interested, and I'm also very curious about it because the bidding process has expired, and now we're at the evaluation phase of this toolkit. So we hope to complete the evaluation and contract by the end of July, with the giving the time 2 months period for this development. The draft, the third one, the milestone, which is October 2025, is very important because we are going to organize a stakeholder workshop, bringing together the practitioners and scientists to give feedback on this. But I believe that this will be through the strategic partnership. Currently, we have NOAA and we have Transport Canada, and many of the ICS, University of Southampton, many of our strategic partners are also here. I'm sorry if I forget any of the names, but we have a long list of them. So it was always possible to establish a strategic partnership with the Glow Noise Partnership through an endorsement of a letter. Actually, we have a sample letter. It doesn't mean that any cash financing or contribution to the process, but what we are actually requesting is an in-kind contribution, mainly the expertise of the partners. So what I mean by bringing this up is that if we can establish a strategic partnership, so it is always possible that you can contribute to this toolkit and updating as well. It might be vice versa as well, but I would just prefer and suggest this way as well. So in November 2025, we hope to roll out this toolkit, and the countries um, roll out this toolkit through the webinars. And also in November and December, we will be having the in-country workshops with all the stakeholders in the countries, because we have the national task forces established already, which I forgot to mention at the beginning. And by the end of this year, the countries will have their toolkit, which by means of their own national capacities will be able to conduct their national risk assessments. But already we see that we will see from the case of the Chile, that's one of our beneficiary countries as well, that they by their national efforts already completed some studies. So Glonoise will also increase the level of the knowledge that we are going to gather from the countries and help them, also support them to draw the baselines as well. Next slide, please.
We have about 1 minute left.
Yes, in 1 minute, I'm going to complete everything. So we are here, we developed the toolkit by the end of December, and I already mentioned about the URN risk assessments will be carried out in 6 lead pilot countries I mentioned during this period. And I hope that it's not going to be a very comprehensive one because of the time limitations of the project, but we hope that we will receive the reports by September, and we will continue with the closure of the project by December, sharp by December 2026. But we're also planning to continue with the next phase of the project. So far, we have too many interested countries, but also we are trying to bring together the activities as well, what we can put as an added value on what we have established in this phase. And together we have very important learning exchange program for women professionals, and we are also continuing the stakeholder engagement plan, which is very comprehensive, and we have one of our consultants also here present in this workshop. And also I mentioned already the strategic partnership as well. I think this must be my last slide. If I would have time, I would also like to mention our key takeaways from the IMO-WMU workshop in regards to the barriers and the challenges of the developing countries. But if anyone is interested on this topic, so I would be happy to share with you as well the challenges that we have identified in the panel that we brought together the developing countries in the workshop. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Subtab. That was great. We have about 10 or 11 minutes for questions, so we'll try to cover a lot in a little time. If all of the presenters could please come back on camera and I can spotlight you. I'm going to start with a question actually for Jesse, but then I would like to hear from any of the presenters. You mentioned that URN has not been a design goal for most commercial vessels. One thing that has been brought up multiple times is how can we further incentivize owners and operators to include these updated design standards to reduce underwater noise? You mentioned that they want to, but what is needed for realistic implementation? Including that, what are primary challenges to uptake? Is it actually operational feasibility? Is it cost associated with it? Or is it the fact that ship owners actually need a specific URN target in order to design and monitor and build these vessels? So if you could start that would be great.
Yeah, I guess I would argue to a certain extent all of the above. I mean, something that I've heard through a separate recent event is incentives are certainly preferred to regulation. And so, yeah, I would strongly encourage the use of incentives, particularly with underwater noise, where, as we've said, we know the physics, we have design processes, we have design tools, but we don't know the solutions to specific vessel issues today for many types of vessels. And again, I may be looking primarily at container ships or other vessels where they have highly optimized the design for fuel efficiency. It should come as no surprise that if you start to mess with that design to reduce underwater noise, you are most likely just going to end up in a place that is less fuel efficient, unless you really take that design and do something more drastic or just more significant than changing one or two parameters. So because of that, there will be costs, right? And those costs are real. And I think that using an incentive approach would be beneficial to encourage, it's not only studies, but also actual implementation of just core designs or designs plus technologies, whatever combination is going to actually get us across the goal line here.
Great, thank you. Chris or Niels, did you have anything to add to that in terms of the regulatory uptake?
Well, I agree with Jesse, but I want to remember one of the first things he pointed out in his presentation was that in the first stage of the design, the ship owner has to ask for it. So awareness raising is key to this, because if the ship owner is not aware of it, then he won't ask for it, and then it won't happen. So that's crucial, and I agree with the incentives, and we're looking into it, and also for the policymakers, and it is essential to understand the shipping industry and how it works, and that's also a major point for both parts to understand each other and learn to speak each other's language.
Great. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you for the question. I'd answer it with three points. Firstly, within our members, we on the subject of underwater radiated noise, we've seen initially quite a bit of anxiety. They don't really know what this means and how difficult it is and how much it's going to cost, etc. So part of what we've been doing is answering that anxiety and explaining to them, if they do this alongside their energy efficiency measures, it doesn't have to be hard. It can be easy. But it just needs a little bit of care and attention with respect to what energy efficiency measures they choose. Secondly, I think a lot can be done with the incentive programs. As I mentioned earlier, we've done a case study recently where we looked at the cost for the ship owner of putting in place a noise management plan. And the majority of that cost related to the noise measurements, and comparing that with the cost of or the benefits accrued from an incentive scheme like IAPHESI. And we could see a modest financial gain, and if we can get that message out to ship owners, firstly, that it doesn't have to be difficult, and secondly, you can actually at least be cash neutral or maybe even make a very small gain because of this, I think we'll start to win the battle. And then lastly, the third point, improve access to affordable noise measurement. At the moment, it can be very difficult and expensive for a ship owner to baseline the noise signature of a ship. And of course, ideally, we want to be able to do this regularly, after refits and modifications, for example, to assess the impact on the noise. And at the moment, the noise measuring facilities are few and far between, and some of them are very expensive. But thank you.
Thank you so much. Another question that was brought up is about these threshold values. And obviously, it's been mentioned before, but seemingly elusive threshold values. So if we can't set these, how do we set credible targets? And Orly, I was wondering if you could kind of talk about having this refined URN target product. And I know you're already in phase 1, but what the realistic implementation of phase 2 is with what you have and where it needs to go in the future.
Yeah, sure. This is a questions we've been hashing out back and forth, because as opposed to what's happening in the EU, in Canada, we don't have yet a framework to establish, biological onset, the lobe. So we've kind of I mean, the two are necessary to address URN eventually. So we've kind of rather started from the vessel source level and looking at the distribution of this source level per vessel class, and looking at if, you know, for the same type of ship, similar length, why would you have such a wide spectrum of noise signature? And so if you're the starting point was the median, but I think now we're starting to see if we're able to categorize a little bit more, then ship owners will start, you know, thinking about it, comparing ships and starting to really go into that detail, the design detail, and trying to better understand their signature, and that will help you know, start thinking about those next steps. So that's really the goal of that second phase, is really for them to provide that information, to start those discussions, think about like, what are those possible, you know, what are they seeing into their signature, what may contribute to that noise, and you know, how that they can factor that in their noise management plan. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And finally, I think we'll only have time for one last question, and it's a big one, so I don't think that we'll get all the answers here. But we heard a lot about this trade-off between or synergy between improving efficiency or and/or the co-optimization of reducing underwater noise. One thing to mention is that we're really in an opportune time, especially with some of these new vessels coming online with these design standards. Is there a way, in any of your opinions, that we can really prioritize the underwater noise piece of this to make sure that that's explicitly considered, as opposed to just a byproduct of energy efficiency and greenhouse gas reduction?
I'll jump in. I mean, even though it's something that I've said in the presentation, I mean, the process is to include underwater noise with fuel efficiency in the design spiral. So that can only happen if the vessel specification says you must reduce underwater noise or you must hit a specific target, which again, the details of exactly how those words get into the spec can, I've only glossed over it in this presentation, but designers are only going to design to what they're told to design to, and no more, because that extra requirement of, oh, let's just throw in underwater noise, even though the owner may not want this, that's going to eat up margin in other areas for their design, and they may have a more difficult time making speed, for example, or just other things. So the whole design needs to be balanced in order to achieve all of the above.
Thank you. Chris, go ahead.
Thank you, and thanks for the question. Personally, I wouldn't address it in that way. You know, what I would suggest is, as per my presentation, consider the opportunity that the synergies present and leverage them. And there's very few energy efficiency measures which increase noise, so let's focus on those. That's a very simple message to get across. And if we can deal with those few things, then the end result is that noise will go down. You know, it has to. Just very quickly, I'll give another example. In 2023, there was a greenhouse gas regulation introduced called EEXI. It's the design index for existing ships. And the preferred compliance method for that was overridable power limitation. In effect, you limit the power of the engine and you reduce the speed of the ship. And analysis by the Korean Register, the Korean Classification Society, indicates that the speed reductions attributable just to that one regulation are between 0.9 and 6.5 knots, depending on the type of vessel and the circumstances. So you can imagine what effect that has had on underwater radiated noise. And that will apply to most existing ships since 2023. I think we have to be careful with further reductions in speed, because we can get to the point where it becomes a capacity issue. If we slow down too much, then we need additional ships to maintain the capacity. So, you know, you end up with additional noise from the additional ships. But there is a system, a methodology called just in time, and there's a number of projects trying to develop systems for this, where you simply try and define a system where the ship arrives perfectly on time to offload. There's no waiting time involved at the port. And one of those projects, they estimated that such a system implemented on a particular route could reduce noise energy on that route by up to 40%. So you get a saving in fuel consumption, but you also get a beneficial reduction in noise with no loss of capacity. Thank you.
Niels, I'll let you close us out. Vahid, I see your hand up. If you could put your comment in the Q&A or the chat, we'll try to get to it. But unfortunately, we're running short on time. So Niels, go ahead, and then I'll pass it off to Doug for closing remarks.
Okay, just very much in line with Chris is of course for the industry, which is very competitive. So it is the economy, and it is where it is. That is what ship owners decide on. So we have to find a solution. And there was a Japanese study that had as a slow down, but on the other hand, keep the same travel time. And then you saw that the effect of slowing down was totally eating up by speeding up on the other part of the track. So it has to be a more global, a more holistic approach to it, taking into the economy as well. So that's a very difficult part, I think. But thanks.
Thank you so much. Thank you again to all the presenters today. That was wonderful. I hope that people will be able to ingest and digest this information and come back tomorrow for a very productive panel conversation. For now, I will pass it on to Doug for closing remarks. Doug, if you are there, could you hop on camera?
Can you not see me? Hello, can you see me and hear me? Awesome. All right. Yeah, thank you to everyone for your contributions, for attending. And I just have to say that for me personally, as well as a scientist, acoustician, and stakeholder, this is a tremendously satisfying gathering. And I think it's it's the type of gathering that we envisioned when we started talking about Game On, and not that Game On is the end all be all by any means, but just the idea that we can get together like this and have specialists from a variety of angles and sectors getting together and presenting this information that we'll then discuss additionally tomorrow. It's great to see some of the different and adaptive strategies and approaches to target setting, including the biological foundations. And I think targets and thresholds are words that are taking on lots of different, they're quite busy, those two words in particular in this discussion, because we have targets for reducing noise, we have thresholds for animals, we have a lot of different uses of those terms. And I think to have this kind of high level discussion and presentation to digest is fantastic to have in a single included block. And so thank you all for bringing that to it. In addition to that, I hope it's clear to everyone that we are really attacking this issue from all angles, and stakeholders. We've talked about the multi-sectoral part of it, the techniques that was just mentioned, the just-in-time type things, the operational type of strategies and mitigation strategies that we can implement, in addition to the technologies and the technological reduction of noise, and of course that synergy or trade-off with efficiency. So again, I can't imagine having had a better representation of all these things as we move through this. The other thing that is certainly worth bringing out is the rapidly expanding partnerships that we're seeing in this, and they're regional, they're international, and they're certainly global, as we see from the Glow Noise Initiative, and big thanks to CEPTAP for being part of our planning process as well as presenting today. So in 2 minutes before we finish for tomorrow, we have a moderated panel discussion with, again, as we try to do a transdisciplinary representation, where we'll put these questions and ideas and comments and things that were raised today to this set of transdisciplinary panelists, moderated and certainly taking more comments along the way. But we have quite a lot of time for that panel discussion tomorrow. From it starts at 11 tomorrow, and we have the panel session set up from 11:15 to 12:40 after some initial remarks from Michael Jazzy from NRDC and the setup of that panel with Regan Nelson, I'm sorry, as the moderator. And then we've also left that finishes at 12:40, and then from 12:40 to 1300. Sorry, these are all Eastern U.S. Times. I should have stated that. Then we'll have a summary and key takeaways, and that's the part of the Game On model, which is sequestering significant time to actually reflect on these things, talk about where we go, talk about future actions, collaborations, follow-up workshops, who's going to do what, who's going to take which actions to make inroads into this issue. In addition to whatever follow-up workshops we can do, these things are obviously quite a bit to put on, less so when they're virtual, and hopefully our way of chunking it up has made it digestible, and so folks can actually hang with it for the allotted period of time. So with that, I think that's all I wanted to say in terms of wrap up and set up for tomorrow. I will turn it back over to Juliet for a farewell. A bientôt.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you all tomorrow.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks all. Thanks.
Bye-bye.